Hi learners, we have been studying and learning new product development. Prior to that, we had done opportunity identification and customer value proposition. Like I said, this entire course is in a flow. So, how do you identify an opportunity? How do you decide who's the right customer segment for your problem or need or idea? And from there, we have been talking about how do we build the product. And in that, I am sure all of you are already familiar with terms like idea, POC. POC is a proof of concept, prototype, which is becoming more and more functional and closer in form, in closer looking to what the finished product will be. We introduced a term to you called the minimum viable product, which is very, very needed in the case of a digital product, but it is also something that is needed in the case of a physical product, a minimum viable product. And from there, you go on to do the manufacturing product. We did share some examples. I remember, I think I did the one of the IIT Bombay startups called Atomberg, and how their BLDC fans progressed along this journey. We have capsuled 2 case studies for you to understand the journey from a customer to a product and then to market. And one of them is from a consumer goods company, and that's NutriChoice. And in this lesson, we are doing a medical devices case study. And the first thing that I would like to tell you about the medical devices case study, where I am going to walk you through from the idea to how it makes an impact because it is medical devices and it is in healthcare. It makes an impact on a patient, makes a difference to a patient, to the doctor who is serving the patient, and therefore to all of society. And I would like to thank Professor B. Ravi, who is a faculty member at IIT Bombay and currently is the director at NIT Surathkal. He used to be the professor in charge of BETIC, which is our center for innovation, technology innovation in biomedical devices. BETIC is a flourishing center at IIT Bombay. Professor Ravi has written this book, which is called The Essence of Medical Device Innovation. I am borrowing from the classes and the lessons that he has put together. And as you see this journey, you will see the case of a couple of medical devices which are capsuled here, and learn a few key lessons. And I will tell you the lessons up front. They are the same, which is learn from your customer what they need, develop a product to those needs, and when you go to market, you will then meet with success. Professor Ravi also calls this taking Saraswati, which is the knowledge that we have in our academic institutes, in our labs, that he calls Saraswati, the knowledge, the know-how that we have in residing in the minds and heads of students, of researchers, of professors, of faculty members. And how can that research that is being carried out in our labs go on to become Lakshmi, which is the other goddess that Hindus in India believe in. But more than the Hindus, the term goddess Lakshmi stands for wealth. So, how is it that we transition from Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge, to Lakshmi, which is the goddess of wealth, through the commercialization route? It is a new term that I am introducing. Commercialization simply means how do you take an idea that you have, how do you take the research that is being done in academic institutes and in labs of many of the students and faculty members in this course, and how can you convert them into a product. that not just creates wealth for the entrepreneur, but it also creates an impact on people who need it the most. So, thank you to Betic for sharing this case study with us, so that it can be used for all of you to understand how the new product development process happens. This we will capsule this digital stethoscope as the example of the medical device that has been developed here by entrepreneurs at Betic at IIT Bombay. So, the innovation process, there are 4 steps in this innovation process. The first step is called define, and in Betic the definition is very clear. Who defines the problem is very clear, and as you can see, under the word define is a bracket which says doctor. In this picture that you see, there's a doctor who's got the microphone in his hand, and he is articulating what is the problem that is being faced by doctors or patients in a particular situation. So, doctors are the ones who are invited by Betic to maybe twice a year this kind of forum, which has doctors, electrical engineers, control systems, designers, management students who will help create the business case for it. The belief is very simple. The belief is that you need an interdisciplinary team which has a medical professional, which has engineering professionals, which has designers, and which has business professionals who will take something which is needed, create it, and then take it to market. So, in the define stage, what is defined is the team. I have already explained that the team is a matchmaking in this particular case. Betic runs this called Medha, I think is the name of their boot camp, where a team is formed with diverse doctor, electrical engineer, control system, a mechanical engineer perhaps, potentially a designer, and somebody from the business function. So, teams are built like that. They then do clinical immersion because they know that here they can observe a problem either in the clinics of a doctor or in the operation theatres or where patients come together. So, that is clinical immersion, we will talk about that. Then the important thing is defining the problem, that is what the whole attempt is. And even as you define the problem, you realize as an inventor, an innovator, whether there is a feasibility, whether it is possible to solve or it is not possible to solve. So, that is the define step of the process. The second step of the process is develop, which means having defined the problem, we have defined the problem, we have defined the need, now we need to go find a solution for it. And here the answer is researcher, but it typically is a research team. It is never a single person that actually does all of the research and development. This is a picture from the Betic lab, somebody working with an instrument on a device that needs to be created. And what happens in this process is the entire design process. So, the 3-4 stages, which is thinking of a POC, a proof of concept, how can we demonstrate that this problem can indeed be solved, even if the proof of concept or the POC does not look anything like the final product or not, but it is a demonstration that technically it is feasible. We then build a virtual prototype, which typically is a design or a drawing, like I explained to you in the steps of design. It could be AutoCAD, which means it's a 3D model on a computer, or it could be a rapid prototype, which means that we make it on a foam board or 3D print it using a material which finally may not be the material at all, but it gives you an idea. It gives the researcher an idea that this indeed can be done technically, and in form it will look something like this and it will offer this functionality. So, a virtual prototype, a rapid prototype, and a functional prototype. A rapid prototype shows the form, a virtual prototype shows the design, 3D on a computer, and a functional prototype is when both form and function come together. So, if I am a prototype of this clicker will have both the clickability as well as how it will look and feel like when you hold it in your hand. This is entirely in the purview of the research team, which again, like I said, will always be an interdisciplinary team. In the second part to this process, we introduce the word deliver, which means that what have we done so far? We have defined the problem, we have developed the solution. There is no point for the solution to sit inside my lab or sit inside your lab. It has to be delivered to the market, and the person who does that or the people who do that are the entrepreneurs or the entrepreneurial team. And what do? They do testing, they do pilot manufacturing, and they do trials. Now, please understand, many of these terms have come up because it is a medical device. We may not have had human clinical trials in the cookie that I was talking to you about in the case study on NutriChoice. They are human trials, but they are more taste trials rather than trials on humans. Here, what we are testing for is whether the medical device that we are designing is human being friendly is a poor word, because friendly is not enough. There is regulatory needs, which is, if it is, there are 4 grades of medical devices depending on whether it is external to the body or it is internal, and is it internal through the body part, does it touch your skin, etc., and so on. So, here you need to do clinical trials to prove that it is safe for the human being and that it is effective. If it is meant to do ABC, it actually does ABC. So, in the deliver stage, we test, we manufacture, and we do trials from a clinical trial point of view to ensure that our product is safe for the consumer and effective in delivering what it is meant to deliver. Of course, in all of this process, we get certification, which means that whether it is an ISO certification or depending on it might be under the Ayush Ministry of the Government of India, or it might be under Health Ministry, we require the certification so that it can be taken as a medical device into the market. Yeah. The fourth part is deploy, which means you actually scale up, and here we need both the entrepreneur as well as the investor. So far, the entrepreneur or the entrepreneurial team has developed this using grants which may be available from some lab that they are working in, or very often from Government of India programs, and there are several Government of India programs which we will cover at a different stage in our course, Foundations of Entrepreneurship. But suffice it to say that money is available for prototyping to prove that you can create a device which meets a certain need and it is of the right quality and delivers the functionality that it is supposed to deliver. By this time, you are now ready to go to market, and we do not need to now sell 5 devices or 3 devices or 10 devices. We now need to scale. That is the process of deployment, and here funding is a very key need, and therefore, under the word deploy, we have written investor plus entrepreneur. The funding comes from the investor, the shram or the sweat equity or the shramdan or the actual work, action, going to market, etc., comes from the entrepreneur. And here what happens is the business model is created, there is a mass production that happens, and there is a distribution or a go to market process that happens. We will come to go to market, which is sales and marketing, in our next module, which is after the new product development module. But just want you to understand that in deployment, we need to make sure that pilot manufacturing moves to mass manufacturing, which is like a large number of products, that we have built in intellectual property, we have we have registered our product, we have patented it, we have trademarked our brand, and etc. We also need to make sure that the product that we have developed, in this case a medical device, has been distributed, is available, Distribution can be done virtually, can be done physically, and again, while that is part of go to market, it's important to know at this stage, which is of deployment, which is where you take your small test market, which you have done, maybe sold 3 pieces, sold 5 pieces, sold 10 pieces, and now move to mass manufacturing, move to full scale distribution, and are able to have a business model which is sustainable in terms of making money. So, that is the innovation process. You define the need, you develop the solution or the product, you then deliver it to the market that you had set out to, and you then grow it by deploying it in a manner which ensures that both scale as well as quality are managed well. From here, this whole thing was explained with IU devices. If you can see the entrepreneur in the image on the right hand side is testing, it is a digital stethoscope. We will cover it, I am going to show it to you on the next slide itself. Yeah. So, I am going to use IU devices, which was developed at Betic as the case study or as the reference for how medical devices go through. So, if you look at the leftmost, which is where the doctor and the 2 co-founders are sitting on the same table and discussing the problem of not getting, of a remote patient and not being, and a doctor not being able to travel to those remote areas, but wanting to hear the sounds through a stethoscope and not just get a notification from either a nurse who is available there or a paramedic who is, let us say, available there. So, here is what the proof of concept looks like. As you can see, there is a laptop, there is some wires, and if you can look at the screen of the laptop, it is showing how digital, how sounds can be transmitted digitally, and here the sound is of your heartbeat, because this is the attempt at building a digital stethoscope. And then the invention process takes over, where you can see this person working in a lab, and the prototype is beginning to look like a stethoscope, but not yet a digital stethoscope. It is still kind of like the regular stethoscope that we use. In the deliver phase, which we call innovation, and please remember that I have used the term innovation is equal to invention plus adoption. Invention is what happens in our labs, adoption is when the customer starts using it, right. So, innovation is the third step. Here, if you can see, the head is detachable, which means that person A can place the digital stethoscope on the patient's chest, and somebody else in a remote environment can hear the sounds because it is connected with your phone, and the sounds are transmitted over the internet. Yeah. It was a very useful device during COVID, where even though it was not a remote situation, you might have been a doctor in the same hospital, but everybody was not going into COVID wards because it was not the protocol being followed at that time. So, some people were assigned to that ward, and this device was used to hear the heart sounds through using a stethoscope being placed on the chest and the sound being transmitted from the mobile phone into another mobile phone or into a computer and so on. What I need you to see is how rudimentary, how basic the proof of concept looks. It is possible to prove or to demonstrate that technically it is possible to transmit sounds digitally, which is the POC for this particular problem stroke idea, and then the functional prototype, and then a product, which is, let me call it an MVP, and then deploy product, which is how it actually scaled up. It scaled up in the 4th version in this sheet. So, this is the progression, go from proof of concept to prototype to a product to practice. Here is how Betic does defining the problem, which is always through a field immersion. They have built a great network of doctors. Of course, it was not easy to build. There were no relationships that really speaking centers at IIT Bombay had with doctors. And this is almost maybe 10 years ago. Yeah? And one by one these networks were built, and so the Betic team is able to go and observe and record and see what kind of devices doctors are using, what kind of devices clinicians are using. They are able to see the workflow. Something is picked up from here, something is kept here. How can you make this more efficient? How can you make this more effective? What are the challenges? What are the gaps? How can some of these be plugged in? And the first step in the process is observation, of course with prior permissions and consents. And if you are recording something, then even more permissions and consent is needed. This is of course in a hospital directly that observations were happening, and what is happening is observing the diagnosis, observing the treatment, observing the follow-ups, always observing to find gaps, to find challenges, to find things that can be improved, things that are difficult for human beings to do, or things which should not use only human beings to do because there is fatigue as far as documenting or doing everything only by the human and not involving a machine at all. So, the problem statement is the output of the define the problem phase. And how do we go about doing the problem statement? Well, this says this is the well defined unmet need is the first step in product innovation. There is a need, it is not met today, or it is underserved, which means that it is met poorly, inefficiently. Clear statement of user need in the least possible words. If you can do it in pictures without words, even better. You know, they say that a picture speaks 1,000 words. So, well defined unmet need is the first step as far as product innovation is concerned. Here is a picture which I think Betic did a lab, did a field work somewhere, and I think that is Bengali script. Essentially, only when you go to meet patients, observe patients, do you understand the needs that doctors, the medical ecosystem needs. So, these are some rules that Betic has framed, that the rule 1 for a problem statement should include what, why, who, which is the same thing that we have taught you in customer value proposition, which is what is it, who is it for, and why is it valuable. Rule 1, that is what Betic states as should be included in the problem statement. Rules 2 say should not be vague, else it is difficult to evolve ideas or evaluate ideas. The rule 3 is the reverse of vague, which is it must not point to a solution. You can't start with the solution and retrofit a problem around it, no. You have to start from a problem and then find a solution. What happens if you point to a solution already, then some ideas which could be radical or which could be different will get blocked. Yeah. And rule 4, which is very important, it must always go to the root cause of the problem and not stay at a surface kind of level. Otherwise, we will solve the wrong problem. We will solve the surface problem and not really the root cause. And here is one example that they used, which is what is it? It is a portable cabinet. Why is it needed? To safely store medicines. And who needs it? Rural hospitals. I do not know if this is something that maybe even urban hospitals need, but it is a very clearly defined problem. It is in rural clinics and rural hospitals, safely store medicines, and it is a portable cabinet. Yeah? So, not very different from what we had taught earlier, which is what is it, who is it for, and why is it valuable, is how we had articulated it when we had studied the customer value proposition. In develop phase, we are designing, we are prototyping, and we are manufacturing. This is one of the projects that the Betic team worked on, which is about a knee implant, and just see the stages in development. They are all 3D prototypes using different kinds of materials. Yeah. From here, they went into testing, and testing for something that goes into the human body needs biological safety, which is the green at the bottom of the slide, you need to do lab testing, which is to establish safety before you go into a human trial, and then you go into a human trial to prove safety, to prove efficacy, means that it does what it is supposed to do, and accuracy. Accuracy is, you know, the 1 sigma, 2 sigma, 6 sigma, yeah? And therefore you get certification, which is based on the risk class. Risk class for medical devices, like I said, could be of different kinds depending on outside the body, inside the body, and so on. So, the checks are on biological safety, on mechanical safety, on electrical safety, and on efficacy. Efficacy means effectiveness, means did the product do what it was supposed to do. So, testing in the lab first, then doing human clinical trials, and then getting certification for the device. So, this is the deliver step of the project. And deploy. In deploy for a medical device, you need multiple things, you know. So, you start with making a dossier which tells the very often these products are not necessarily taken to market or commercialized by the same people who set out to do the research. The doctor that set out to be part of this is not really interested in being the entrepreneur, very unlikely. The doctor has a role to play, which is of identifying the problem. So, here having come up with a solution, we need to see how it can be commercialized, and maybe it will be commercialized by multiple manufacturers or multiple businesses at different states or different regions and so on. So, the product dossier has the design, which are the drawings and so on, how was the manufacturing done, which is what are the checks that it has been through, and it needs to build a validation, which is whatever lab tests and human trials and clinical trials that were done needs to be put in, and that is referred to as a product dossier. Very often the intellectual property will have been filed. So, a patent may have been filed, a brand logo may have been done, a trademark may have been done. So, typically a patent or an intellectual property is filed by the institute where the development happens, in our case the academic institute where the research happens. The inventor or the researcher contributes to the invention, and the revenue is shared between the institute as well as the inventor. Technology is licensed, that commercialization can be done directly by the researcher, but often the technology is licensed to a third party to both manufacture and sell in the market, and it is done either by a startup. In the case of the IU devices, they themselves took it to market as a startup, or it can be done by a large company, or it can be sold to the government to be taken forward through a non-profit or a NGO kind of route. So, very often the licensing is done so that this product becomes useful, not just in the limited geography that it was developed in, but is able to serve a much larger geography. So, the deployment process needs a dossier which explains how this product was developed, the intellectual property that has been filed for this new product, and the licensing of technology needs can be met by either a startup or a company or a non-profit by the government. I am now going to capsule the learnings, and like I have said before, these are from BETIC. So, they are referred to as valleys of death. As an inventor, as an innovator, you have to pass 4 valleys of death for you to live. So, the first valley of death happens at the ideation stage. Can your concept at least have a POC, which is a proof of concept? You had a concept which was an idea in your head, or maybe it was written on paper. Can you prove or can you validate that it can be done technically? That is the first stage. Where do you do it? You do it typically in an R&D lab. All of us are from academic institutes, many of us are from academic institutes. We can test whether an R&D lab can actually make this product in a feasible manner or not. There are some numbers at the bottom which indicate a very rough and ready number or funding that is needed to do this. This is $1,000, which in today's world is about 85,000 rupees or 88,000 rupees. That number keeps changing all the time depending on the dollar rupee conversion, but order of magnitude it stays like this. Can your concept at least become POC? That means that the first valley of death, which is the ideation valley, has been crossed. This is reasonably easy to do. The second, they get tougher and tougher as they go along. 2 are here and 2 are on the next slide. So, there are 4 valleys of death. The second one is called the invention valley, where you have to take the product, take the idea from a proof of concept into a functional prototype, into a working prototype. Okay. And here form may not be very important, what it looks like may not be very important, but it has to function. Yeah. Typically in a prototype, both form, which is the look, aesthetic, ergonomics, feel, all that is important, as well as it being efficacious, being functional. This is done typically at a prototyping center, and in his book that Professor Ravi of BETIC has written, he refers to it as the invention valley of death. He talks about there being a critical gap of academia going to society. So, the academic work that happens in our labs stays in our labs and does not improve lives of people in society, and he is using medical devices as a case in point. I am not going there. So, 2 valleys of death. One is to ensure that your idea can actually be technically done, and the second is going from a POC, which is that validation from it can be technically done, to actually this is the prototype and this is what it looks like and this is how it delivers on its promise. The third valley of death is going from a prototype to a product. Prototypes are, single, you may have made it in a lab with 3D printing se banaya hoga, yeah, you could have machine formed it, or you would have sent it to one pilot manufacturer and एक product ban gaya hoga. But when you want to sell, you need to produce it in larger numbers than just that one product which we are, making and finishing it to perfection in our labs. In any case, hand doing anything or even at our lab level will never get the perfection that mass manufacturing gets. This is a very deep valley to be able to convert from a prototype into a product, and the entrepreneur and inventor or innovator has to climb up from this valley and not fall down into this valley. And here we usually find an incubator or a technology accelerator who will help us with prototyping, taking it to a pilot manufacturing, and that is what the role of a technology accelerator is. The last valley he calls the impaction valley, and as you can see he has drawn 3 sub valleys out of that. So, the first one is the business plan, which is sure you have a product, but does the how will you take it to market? Is there a business plan for it? Is there investment or funding for it? How will you achieve the goals that you had set out? Yeah. The second is, can this product be mass produced? Can it be made in the same consistency, the same quality, the same kind of specifications? And because this is medical devices, there cannot be anything less than a 6 sigma on this, because it is going into the human body often, not always, but often. Yeah? And the third is, do you have the distribution? So, in this valley, whether you are a medical device or you are a cookie or you are a AI software solution, you are trying to figure out whether you have the money to take it to market, you have the business plan to take it to market, are you able to produce large quantities, are you able to scale up, and is your distribution channel right for the kind of product that you have. So, here you need the help of a business incubator. Many of our higher educational institutes do have a business incubator. We have a little section where we will cover the role of a business incubator, as well as the kind of grants that are available through an incubator to ventures in academic institutions. The Government of India has been extremely supportive of that. We will cover that in our finance module, where we talk of incubation and how do you fundraise. And if you have been noticing, from $1,000 now we have reached $1 million. Yeah? So, that is the kind of money it takes to take a a product, a medical device in this case, but any product to market. 4 valleys of death, one between idea going to POC, the other going from POC to a prototype. The third valley of death is taking from a prototype, which is a one single one product, into a mass produced product, and the fourth is taking this product and actually launching it in market and making a success of it by having the right funding, by having great quality manufacturing, and by having the right distribution channels. So, only if you do all this well are you able to take Saraswati, the knowledge that we have in our labs, into the market and create wealth from it, which is the Saraswati and Lakshmi coming together to create an impact on customers, as well as an impact in terms of profits or sustained profit for the entrepreneur. I just wanted to put this slide together for you to see, able to see. I had broken them into 2 slides so that it was easy to talk about them. These are the 4 valleys of death, going from academia into impacting society. So, in this case study, which was on medical devices, we spoke of the same route to building a product, which is you start at an idea, make it a concept, create a POC, which is a proof of concept. From a POC, you go into a prototype, which is a functional prototype, which has got both form and function. And after prototype, we need to go into mass manufacturing. And here you not just need mass manufacturing, we need the distribution channel and we need the funding to be able to take it to market. So, in new product development, these are the stages, and whether it is a case study of the humble cookie that you eat or the not so humble and very complicated and technologically savvy implant that goes into our bodies because we have a cancer or a tumor, the stages are the same. The what you do within the stage might get more and more complex, but the stages are idea, concept, proof of concept, prototype, and minimum viable product and the manufactured product. Those are the stages in the development of a new product. Thank you.